Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you guys are new. So in today's video we are doing something really cool, I think, and we are tier ranking all of the dystopian books from the 2010-2012 era. If you're around on booktube during that time, then you know the craziness that was all of the dystopian books coming out during that time. And it started with Hunger Games and then it went on for, I feel like, years. And I read a ton of them. I love dystopian books. I still like them, but I do think I'm kind of a little bit over them at this point because I've read so many. But I saw this video on a French YouTuber, a French Canadian YouTuber, where she was ranking all of the dystopian books she had read during that time. And I thought it was a really cool idea, and I've always wanted to do a tier ranking video. So I thought it would be a cool thing to tier rank all of the dystopian books I have read during that time. I have 17 to talk to you guys about. All of them I have read, not necessarily finished the whole series, but I still wanted to include them because I think it tells you something if I haven't finished a series, because there's so many that I have, read the whole series. So I still included those, and I've included also a few of the classic dystopian books that I feel that made a comeback during that time. And I have read those classic books, so that's why I wanted to include them as well. So let's get started with the tier ranking books. So, like I said, I am tier ranking all of these books right here. As you can see, I have 17 of them, and then this is kind of my ranking system. I have God tier, which is obviously like the best books, like the most amazing books, kind of becoming classic now, I think, at this point almost. They're the best book, so well done, love it, would recommend, would reread them. God tier, I mean, it just speaks for itself. Then we have the demigod tier here, which I feel are these are really good books, but they're not on par with some of the amazing books. And then the human tier are kind of the average books, because I mean, us human are the average people here on earth. So they're the books that I might loved the first book, and then the next in the series weren't as great, or maybe I haven't read the rest of the series. That's the human tier. We have the half demon tier, which are bad book, but not the worst books. These are books that I don't really enjoy, that I maybe didn't finish the series because I didn't really enjoy them. So I mean, that's the half demon books. And then the devil's tier right here, which is the worst books, the one that are really bad, that I really did not love. I don't have that many that are gonna go in this tier, but I still wanted to include that right here. So this is my ranking system. So we'll start with the first book. These are in no particular order, they're just in the order that I uploaded them in my tier ranking thing or whatever. Anyways, so the very first one is Delirium. Oops, okay. So Delirium, this was a really good series. This was a really cool concept at a time. I feel like this is about a world where they feel like love is a disease, and I remember really liking the first book. I remember loving the way that they explained how in this world love was a disease, so that was really cool. The first book left off with a huge cliffhanger, and then the second and third book I have read in this series, and I don't really remember too much of them, which I feel like tells you something. I don't really remember too much of the second and third book, which is why I think I'm gonna put it in demigod, because I still remember pretty clearly the first book and I loved it, and I remember enjoying the whole series, but I don't remember too much of the second and third book, which tells you something, I feel like. So I'm gonna put this, so that's why it's gonna go in the demigod tier. So the next book we have is The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. This I read, I remember, and I kind of didn't really like that book, honestly. I remember this was very up and down for me. I loved some part and I hated some other parts. This is a weird book also in the way it's written, like, because the grammar in this book is not the same as ours. Also, he hears the thought of his dog, which was confusing for me at some point. I never finished the whole series. I did say in my review on Goodreads that I wanted to read the next book, but I never went on reading this book. So I'm kind of debating between human and half demon, because I enjoyed some parts, but some parts were just so slow for me. So I think I'm gonna put it in half demon. But I would still be intrigued in maybe reading this book, because I think maybe now that I have more experience in reading in English and I have more experience in reading in general, maybe I would enjoy this book better. But I remember the first time it took me weeks to go through this book, and I just, in the end, I didn't enjoy it as much as some other books. So yeah. So the next book we have is The Giver, which this is not one of the dystopian books that came out in that era, but it's one that made a comeback during that time, I feel like, and the movie also came out during that time, and I think I loved that book. I will tell you, it is kind of one of those classic dystopian books, and I loved the first book. I never went on in reading the second and third book, basically because I never knew they were sequels to that book. So, but for me, this is God tier. I loved The Giver so much. I read it when I was a kid, and it was such a cool concept, and it was so new at the time. It is the first dystopian book that I have ever read. It was just so different, and I loved The Giver. I have reread it since. It was kind of amazing. I really, really liked that book. Okay, so next we have The Jewel, which honestly, on Goodreads it says that I have read the first and second book in the series. I remember vaguely the first book. I think it's very similar to the Deselection book and the Hunger Games, as in there is the jewel in the center, and then the further away you get from that center, the poorer you get. And then there's this girl. I don't remember too much of it, but I remember really, really liking it when I first read it. So I think it's gonna go in human, just because I remember the feeling of reading that book and loving it, but honestly I couldn't tell you what this book is about today, which is kind of a bad sign. But like I said, I've read so many dystopian books during that time that they kind of all blended together, but it's still gonna go in human because I remember liking that series a lot. So yeah. Okay, and then we have The Maze Runner by James Dashner. This is another one that is a really, really popular series, dystopian series here on BookTube. The movie came out as well, and honestly, this I loved. I loved so much. It was so different as well. It was so different than any of the other dystopian books. I read the first book so quickly. The second and third book for me were kind of a letdown, which is why it's gonna go in the demigod tier, I think, but it's gonna go before. Can I do that? No. Yeah, it's gonna go before Delirium because I still liked it more than the Delirium series, but I don't think it's a God tier for me. It's not one of those amazing books, for me at least. The first one was, if we're only counting the first one, then yes, it was absolutely God tier, but the second and third book didn't like it as much, so this is why it's going in the demigod tier. Okay, so the next one is The Fifth Wave, and this is easily a devil for me. This book was so bad in my opinion. The movie as well, couldn't get through the movie as well. I DNF'd that book, I unhauled that book. I cannot even tell you what this book is about, except I think this alien. I wouldn't even put it in dystopian books, but on Goodreads it said it was a dystopian book, which is why I included it in here. But it was so bad, it was so slow. I did not like that book. No, sorry, for me it's the devil. Okay, and now we have The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. This is kind of what started it all for me, at least. It's the first one from the like 2012 era that I have read, and for me this is God tier. I loved it so much. I loved The Hunger Games. I reread it recently. I reread it last year when A Ballad of Songbird and Snake came out, and I still loved it and I still enjoyed it. The last book wasn't the best, but the first two books were amazing in my opinion, and I loved this series. It's in God tier for me. Okay, and next we have Match by Ali Kandi, which I feel like is one that is maybe a little bit less popular. or let's talk about at least. It is very similar in Delirium and also very different. This is a world where basically you get matched. Like the technology is able to match you to your perfect match, and obviously there's a glitch with our main character and she gets matched with two people. And I remember loving that series. The first two books were really good. The last book was kind of confusing. This is also one that I have read all three books in the series, and this is a hard one for me because I liked it better than Delirium, I will tell you. I like the world building in this one better. I love the main character as well. I loved her thought process so much. I could relate to her a lot more than in Delirium. I don't know if I like it. I don't know. This is a hard one for me. I think it's gonna go in Demigod just because I don't think it's one that I would reread. So it cannot go in God tier if I don't plan on rereading it. I still really enjoyed it, but it's gonna go right here, I think. I like Match better because Match was so different, but I like Delirium a little bit less. So it's gonna go in between Delirium and The Maze Runner. Okay, next we have Legend by Mary Lou. This is a hard one for me as well because I've only read the first book, but I loved the first book and it was always my intention to read the second book and the third book. I think this is another trilogy. I always wanted to, but I don't know why I haven't. I've only bought the first book, and I think every time I went to the bookstore they never had the sequels to that book, and then I just kind of forgot. It is one that I would want to reread and read the whole trilogy because I really enjoyed it, but I don't think I could put it in Demigod because I just read the first book. I'm gonna put it in Human, but I'm gonna put it before The Jewel because I remember liking this book a lot better than The Jewel. I remember more of this book than The Jewel, so it's gonna go in Human, but at the top of Human. Okay, so the next one we have is The Selection, which this has been getting so much hate on BookTube. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I loved The Selection. It was so good. Not good, but it was so fun to read. It is obviously kind of a guilty pleasure. I loved it. And honestly, I think I want to put it in God tier because I loved it. It was so cool. This was described as The Bachelor meet Hunger Games, and it kind of was. It was written for the younger girl out there, or guy I guess out there, which I think is why it's getting so much hate. If you go into this series knowing that it's gonna be younger, then I think you're really gonna enjoy it. And I really liked it. I liked the first trilogy. The book on the daughter, I don't remember the name of that book, was kind of bad, I will admit, but the first three books I loved, so I'm gonna put it in God tier. This is the one that I would reread today, but I'm kind of nervous because I don't know if I'm gonna love it as much since I am a lot older now. But still, I really want to put it in God tier. It is gonna go in the bottom of the God tier, I will say. So that's my order. Okay, next one is Sight by Neil Shusterman. This is a hard one for me as well because I loved the first book. I will say it was so good, but I haven't read the second and third book yet. So it's hard for me to tell. I don't know if I want to put it in Demigod or Human. I would probably put it in Human because it's one that maybe is similar to Legend, as in I loved the first book. I just never continued on with the series. It is one though that I would really want to continue with the series. I'm gonna put it between The Jewel and Legend just because I think, from what I remember, I liked Legend better. From what I can remember. Okay, so next one is Shatter Me, which is another really popular book here on BookTube. I have read the first book. I thought I had read the second and third book, but on Goodreads it says that I haven't, which is weird, so I don't really remember. I want to put it on Demigod tier because that was so different than any other books that I have read. The way it's written is you will have some like line and it will be crossed off, and then you have to have something else. So it'd be like, I hate you, and then crossed off, and be like, I love you. And it was so cool and different at the time, and it's a trend that no one continue on though, but I really liked it. And like I said, I thought I had read the second and third book, but now that I know that apparently I haven't, I will reread that series pretty soon. So I mean, it's gonna go in Demigod tier. it's gonna go, I think, right here. Because I really, really liked the first book. And I thought I would like the second and third book, but apparently I never read them. So it's gonna go right here, I think. Or should it go before Match? No. No, it's gonna go there. Yeah, okay. Okay, so the next one is Uglies by Scott Westerfield. I have read the first 2 books for sure. I think I have read the 3rd book, but I'm pretty sure I haven't read the last book. I liked it. It was pretty different than any other dystopian books. I think I'm gonna put it in human though, because but at the bottom of the human tier, because I liked it, but it's not a memorable one for me. It's not one that I would reread. I don't even have this series on my shelf because I unhauled that series. So it's one that I'm gonna put in the bottom of the human tier. Okay, so we have A Brave New World here, which is another classic of the dystopian books that I have read in that era, because I mean, there were so many dystopian books coming out. I really wanted to read a few of the classic ones. And I'm gonna say it's not my favorite. I enjoyed reading it, but honestly, I don't remember too much of what went on. I think I'm gonna put it in the human tier, but at the bottom of the human tier. Honestly, I don't really remember too much about this book. And it's not memorable for me. On the opposite side, we have 1984, which I loved that one. I liked it better than A Brave New World. I read this book when I was younger, because since I had read The Giver and I loved it so much, my parents suggested me Animal Farms and 1984 by George Orwell. So I had read that before, and then I reread it in 2013, I think, or whatever. That time of all of the dystopian books, and I really, really liked it. It's gonna go in demigod, but I think it's gonna go in the bottom of the demigod tier, because this, yeah, I liked it. I still remember a few things about this book. And I mean, it's also, no, you know what? Just because this was written way before all the other books, I might put it right here, because it's one of the classic. So I feel like it deserves some extra point just because it was written way before all of these crazy books. So yeah, I'm actually going to put it, if I can, yeah. I'm actually going to put it in the top tier of the demigod just because it gets extra points for being a classic book. Okay, so now we have the Divergent series by Veronica Roth. This is a hard one for me to rank, because if you only take in consideration the first book, then it is God tier for me. The first book was amazing. I loved it. It was so good. But the last book in the series was, I'm really sorry, but kind of garbage. I hated that book. It went so downhill. I don't know what happened in that series. I don't know how that happened. But yeah, the last book in the series was so bad. And I don't know if the first book was better than how the last book was bad, if that makes any sense. I don't know if they equal each other out, so I should put it in human, or if the first book was better and I should put it in demigod. If it's in demigod, I would put it in the bottom of the demigod just because of the last book. And if it's human, I would put it in the first. I think I want to put it in human. But in the beginning, like in the top tier of the human rank, just because the first book was amazing, but the last book, like, what happened there? Seriously, what happened there? I don't know. So the last one that we have is Unwind by Neil Shusterman. This was such a cool concept and different concept. I feel like Neil Shusterman has so cool concept, like so different and so original concept. I read the first one. I never continued on with the series. It's one that I would continue with the series. So I don't know. I think I'm going to put it in human. But where should I put it? Maybe here. Or maybe, you know what? I'm going to put it here. Because I remember liking The Jewel better. Like the first book from The Jewel better than this book. So yeah, this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to put it right here. So this is it, guys. This is what we ended up with. All of the dystopian books that I have read during the 2012 era. Do you guys agree with my rank? Do you think I did a good job, or would you have done things differently? Please let me know. I'm really interested in knowing what you have done. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I will link the original video in the down bar below. If you guys speak French, you can go check out that video. It was a fun video to watch as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and that's pretty much it. I will thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video.